I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, the head coach for JobSearchCoachingHQ.com, and welcome to JobSearchTV. I do videos daily to help people find work because, frankly, most of you do a pretty bad job of it. And the fact is that there's a different skill set to finding a job than doing a job. And thus, I take some time each morning to try and give you some advice to help you find work. And I thought I would do a show about resumes because, frankly, I haven't done one in a long time. And I'm not going to put up stuff on my screen, to show you what a good resume looks like. I just want to point out some things to you that I think you need to be aware of when constructing a resume in these times, under these circumstances, different than back in the Stone Ages when I got into recruiting. So point number one is you were always taught name, address, and phone number at the top of your resume, right? At least old timers were. And even, a lot of younger people, like older millennials, got that feedback. The fact is, it's not about your address. It's about city, state, and zip code. Now, I know that there are people who tell you that you don't have to include a zip code, but that's a mistake. The mistake is, frankly, that if you want someone to get back in touch with you, whether that's a corporation or a recruiter, they're going to go back into their database and look for people. And they're going to look for people within a specific geographic area. Now, imagine, for example, you live in San Francisco and someone enters in a zip code for you or just answers San Francisco, California. You miss all the surrounding areas, right? Because it doesn't match San Francisco, CA. They need zip code. And a lot of the stuff, like there was an article I read recently on one site where they didn't even mention zip code as a variable. And yet that's how firms key into location. So you've got to get your zip code to the top of the resume. Also, without getting excessive on the design elements, you want to have a lot of white space around it. Now, if you're in artistic fields, you may have a temptation to use a lot of graphic design formats. And if you're submitting it through an applicant tracking system, the system may choke on some of the things that you do because it's hard to parse it into the right fields. So be aware that there's a choice that you make when you go for extensive design elements to create a visually appealing document versus one that's going to be useful to the system. And why do I say useful to the system is important? Well, although I prefer you not to be submitting resumes through an applicant tracking system, and I prefer you to send them directly to hiring managers, the fact is that most of you are going to do it anyway. And the issue comes down to, if the keywords don't match up well and with sufficient frequency, once parsed into the resume and parsed into the right fields, you're not going to get an interview. And that's going to be on you because you chose to make the nice, pretty resume with all sorts of colors and interesting fonts and visually appealing. So you thought it just doesn't work with the system. Instead, a lot of these systems like pretty conventional fonts and a lot of white space. So be aware of that as you construct your resume. I also want to mention that frequency of use of a lot of terms becomes important. So think in terms of, there's a language that's specifically used in the job description, and unless your resume matches up with it, the system may not recognize other variables. So understand it may be looking for someone with a particular academic background, particular skills, who's done a specific type of work previously. It's software. It's not a human being. As much as we hear about AI, they're not really all that good yet. Eventually they'll get there and data dictionaries will get built up. But in the meantime, they're pretty stupid. And since a lot of resumes are being scanned and decided on by the ever popular black hole, think about it from the system standpoint. What gets through the system? The answer comes down to the wording in the resume and the wording in the job description have to match, have to be used repeatedly, and has to be pretty high in sequence with how it's presented in the resume. After all, if the language is used on the bottom of page 3, it suggests to the system that, frankly, you haven't used it recently. So one little trick you can do is the equivalent of a cover letter at the beginning of the resume that kind of says, I want you to see how my background matches up with the job. So you have the keyword in the left-hand column and how long and how recently you've worked within the right-hand column. And that, in effect, becomes page 1 of your resume. So, in effect, what you're doing is starting off with how your background matches, and then the resume follows right behind that. That's one option. There are many variables about that. You could use it as the cover email for your resume, so it's in there. But if you're submitting it through an applicant tracking system, this is a nice little trick that, shall we say, fools the systems quite a bit, because it immediately gives the matches to your background, and then page 2 goes further, or the second half of page 1 goes further to illustrate how your background matches. So those are a couple of ideas. In days of old, we used to talk about customizing resumes for the job. Now we talk about personalization. It has to be personalized for the listener. Same crap, new language. Remember, if you flip the resume like a burger at a fast food restaurant to someone and expect to get a different result, well, it's like the broken watch that's right twice a day. Most of the time it doesn't work. You don't get the interview. And twice a day, in the example of the broken watch, the time is right. All the rest of the time it's wrong. So personalize your resume. Make it fit. Make it obvious that it fits. So I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I hope you found these ideas helpful. If you did and you're watching on YouTube, click the like button, give it a thumbs up on Facebook. Whatever you do, just signal to other people this is worthwhile and share it. Sharing the video helps other people learn about my content and helps them. Also want to mention, if you're interested in one-on-one coaching, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/The Big Game Hunter. Mention that you saw this video. I love knowing that I was helpful to someone. And once we're connected, message me about one-on-one coaching. I look forward to helping you. Hope you have a great day. Take care.